It's a good day to be alive and to do business. Good morning. Welcome to Business Morning here on Channels Television. I'm Ini John McQuarrie. We're going to spend the next 55 minutes together, so let's make the most of it. We'll start with what's going on in the grain market. Chicago wheat rose on Thursday, gaining for a third consecutive session as dry weather in the United States spring crop areas and the latest Russian attack on the Ukrainian grain port supported prices. Soybeans and corn extended gains amid forecasts for hot and dry weather in the United States Midwest. U.S. spring wheat crop is suffering due to dry weather in the northern plains, which is likely to reduce yields. Russian drones struck Ukrainian grain facilities at the Danube River port of Izmail overnight in what a senior official said was a systematic attempt by Moscow to prevent Kyiv from exporting grain to the world. Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Kubrakov said that the port's export capacity had been reduced by 15% and that 13,000 metric tons of grain had been destroyed. However, market reaction has been muted because the impact on overall Black Sea supply appeared to be limited, as with previous strikes against grain infrastructure sites. In soybean and corn market, hot and dry weather forecast this week for the United States Midwest could curb yields, although a crop tour has forecast higher output in some of the key growing areas. That's for grain. We move over to edible oil. Now, Malaysian palm oil futures slipped on Thursday after hitting a 12-day high in the previous session. But the contract was range-bound as a declining ringgit supported sentiment. The benchmark palm oil contract for November delivery on the Bursa Malaysia Derivatives Exchange lost 3 ringgit to 3,843 ringgit, estimated at $827 a metric ton. The ringgit, which is palm's currency of trade, fell 0.37% against the dollar, turning the commodity cheaper for buyers holding foreign currency. Dalian's most active soy oil contract rose 0.3%, while its palm oil contract gained 0.3%. Soy oil prices on the Chicago Board of Trade also gained 0.8%. And from there, we do go over some of the developments in the palm oil sector. That's a 2-day turnover on the back of higher prices. And then also the benchmark palm oil contract for November delivery on the Bursa Malaysia Derivatives Exchange jumped 86 cents per metric ton. Well, we can also tell you back here in Nigeria that the Standards Organization of Nigeria, that's the SON, has been meeting with stakeholders. And they are meeting because they are beginning the sensitization of e-payment platform as well as e-receipts platform. They had a meeting in Lagos with some manufacturers and suppliers of goods and services in the country, telling them how the platforms will work, convincing them to embrace the new platform and the benefit it will bring to both the consumers, the country, and to SON.
We are just electronizing the manual process that we used to do before. We are cutting human intervention, and it will reduce cost of doing business with SON. It will block leakages and wastages in SON. These are the benefits. For the substandard product, since it costs time, so our ability to apprehend defaulters will be made easier. It will cut down the time to apprehend defaulters. This fits squarely into the concept of the new government because my agency is just a step ahead before the introduction of those ministries, because at the end of it all, it's all about digitalization and it's all about making government do its job, its service to the public very easy.
All right, so now let's go to the commodity space now and see what's happening with oil prices this morning. And to join us for that conversation is Dr. Adesola Sumoni, a senior analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Good morning. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Sumoni.
Good morning, Ini. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, so what's happening around oil again this time?
So thank you for your question. We are seeing oil prices at the moment trend downwards, mainly because of weak manufacturing data globally in some key economies. If you look at the manufacturing purchasing managers index for Japan for the month of August, you see that is in contraction region. It came in at around 49.7%. If you look at the same manufacturing PMI for the Eurozone, it came in at around 47%. And also the UK service PMI came in at around 48.7 points. And the way the PMI works is simply a composite index which has a neutral level of 50. So any reading below 50 shows like a contraction in manufacturing activity, and any reading above 50 shows expansion in manufacturing activity. And for the economies of Japan, Eurozone, and the UK, we are seeing contraction, which is kind of dragging economic activity in those economies and weighing on oil demand. In addition to that, we also saw news of a build-up in gasoline stockpiles in the US, which outweighed news of a sharp or larger than expected drawdown in crude oil stockpiles. So with build-up in gasoline stockpiles, it simply means that there's not enough. The demand for gasoline in the US is quite soft, and that's why we are seeing a build-up in gasoline stockpiles. In addition to that, on the other hand, we are seeing Saudi Arabia. There's now consensus that Saudi Arabia would extend its voluntary cuts in oil production by around 1 million barrels a day up until October to keep the markets tight. So going forward, we believe that the markets are tight as it is, but Saudi Arabia's extension or expansion of its voluntary cuts would keep the market tighter and keep prices elevated in the coming months.
Yeah, so I think that the PMI for UK yesterday came as a surprise. For China, we've been seeing that go on for a bit, So obviously, just when we thought that the fear of recession and all of this negative sentiment is over, then, on one day we just see a lot of dropping in PMI. And, of course, this seeps to what's going on in demand of oil and the price. So it doesn't look like we're out of the woods, or we're even on our way out of the woods globally now, not even Nigeria.
Yeah, it seems like we are walking on a tightrope. Even though the recession fears have subsided, they've not completely. They are not completely out yet. They are not completely gone yet. Like we've seen the PMI readings, they came in worse than expected, which is going to even create a dilemma for central banks who are still trying to rein in inflation, particularly the European Union, where inflation is still elevated, and now this drawdown in this contraction in manufacturing activity would even create a dilemma for the European Central Bank, who is expected to increase benchmark interest rates in their coming meetings.
And we see that gas is also up today, 0.63%, and it's connected to Australian gas talks.
Indeed. So what's happening in Australia is apparently there are three export terminals where the worker union in those key export terminals are threatening to strike, and those terminals account for around 10% of global LNG output. Overnight, there was a meeting between the organization and the union for one of the key export terminals, and the consensus is that they expect they will release a report later today, and the expectation is that the industrial action will be averted. But for the other two key export terminals, talks are still ongoing. We are hopeful that the threat of industrial action does not materialize, because if it does, particularly for Europe, it's a big challenge, because these three these three export terminals account for a huge portion, around 10% of global natural gas exports. Now, if there's a disruption if this threat of industrial action materializes and there is a disruption in a global LNG, then we're going to see prices rise upward. We're going to see prices trend upwards, particularly because Australia supplies Asia, and if there's a disruption in Australia, then Asian buyers begin to look towards alternatives such as the US and the Middle East. And at the moment, European natural gas, after moving away from Russia, is buying from the US and the Middle East. So if there's a disruption in Australia, it will boost competition for buyers, and it may put EU in a trying situation. Remember, two factors for the EU natural gas market. One is that although they have reached their storage targets for this year, in advance of the heating season, as at last Saturday, storage for EU gas was around 91%, which is 2 months in advance of the need for heating. But there's also need for continuous imports, and they get those imports from the US and the Middle East. But I was to note that just last year the EU.
Yeah, I was thinking that since the EU, they said they have their storage about 90% full, even ahead of the November 1st deadline. That should also ease demand and bring down price.
Indeed, that is why the kind of increase in price in EU gas is kind of capped, because there's ample supply. But in addition to just ample supply, there's also need for continuous imports, because during the winter season there's going to be a drawdown in the stockpiles, and if there's no replenishment, or if there's no replenishment of that drawdown, then it's going to be almost a crisis situation for the EU. Remember last year, the saving grace we had in the EU last year was because we had a warmer than expected winter. If the winter was colder than expected, then there were expectations that we're going to have energy crisis in the EU. We're going to have blackouts, rationing of gas, and even some houses freezing over.
All right, let's look at other commodities now. Wheat is up. Apparently, the fact that Russia has struck another facility, a grain facility in Ukraine, is a contributory factor here.
Yeah, indeed. As long as Russia and Ukraine keep this tussle between Russia and Ukraine continues, the prices of wheat will remain elevated, and they'll be quite volatile. So, like you said, yesterday there was an attack on grain infrastructure in Ukraine, and the numbers coming out says that around 13,000 tons of grains meant for Egypt and Romania were destroyed. And also numbers coming out of Ukraine show that since Russia pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal, around 270,000 tons of grains have been destroyed by Russia. So I think that is quite significant. But on the other hand, we are seeing Russia exports large quantities of grains, which is kind of keeping prices, which is kind of supporting prices at the moment. And also this uncertainty around the Black Sea region. So the Black Sea grain deal is over at the moment. Although the Turkish president is trying to renegotiate, talk to the Russian president to reopen the deal. But there's still uncertainty around that, and also Ukraine is looking for other creative means to export grain out of the country. But as long as the fact that Russia and Ukraine are still in this tussle, it means that grain prices particularly wheat prices, are going to be quite volatile, and they remain elevated. Yeah,
and they are all meeting. That's Russia, Egypt, without Romania, obviously. They're now meeting in BRICS, the summit. I wonder if this would be a matter to say Egypt could tell Russia to say you're wasting away the grain that was supposed to be sent to us. You're going to keep my people hungry. What do you want to do? I wish it could actually come up.
Perhaps it would come up, perhaps it would, those kind of conversations will come up. Obviously, this is quite a sensitive issue. So I think maybe in a side meeting, they could discuss that. But also talking about BRICS, BRICS is looking to expand their reach in the world. Currently, BRICS economies account for around 25% of global GDP. But recently, I think yesterday, they invited Saudi Arabia, Iran, UAE, Ethiopia, and I think Argentina to join BRICS to kind of expand their influence in the global economy. I think that is quite positive.
Yeah. Oh, you think it's positive? You don't think it's a risk to the Western world? You're in the UK, Dr. Adesola. Don't forget that. You're in the UK. This is anti-West. So please. All right, so finally now, like a bit of good news, I haven't seen it, maybe I haven't gone to the market, that the price of palm oil, that's for 25 liters, is down to 22,500. I don't know, I haven't gone to the market. This is your research of financial derivatives. You know, I'm sure this will be a good, bring a little bit of relief to the mind of a lot of Nigerians.
Indeed, I mean, I think we're in the harvest season at the moment, so we are seeing the price of some commodities trend downwards. Peppers, tomatoes are down. Palm oil is also down, which is quite positive. At least we'll get some respite. But on the other hand, for a lot of exchange rate sensitive commodities like flour, we are seeing their prices trend upwards. Obviously, we know in the global market, the price of wheat is wheat, which is a major component in making flour, is quite volatile, but it is trending upwards. So that plus the exchange rate challenge, I think those two factors together are boosting the price of flour at the moment. And I think because of all these factors together, I think two weeks ago, a couple of months ago, the Bakers Association of Nigeria also increased the price of flour by, I think, 15% to reflect the current cost environment.
All right, Adesola, thank you so much for your time this morning. And well, take good care of yourself. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
All right, now, as we take a break now, we'd like to tell you that financial technology company with interest across remittance, digital banking, and payment infrastructure, Transvar, has expanded its geographical reach to over 100 countries, from the UK, the United States, and more than 27 EU countries, including Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, as well as Nigeria, Ghana, and in Kenya. With its latest move, its innovative product, the Freedom Bank account in Nigeria, subscribers can now stand a chance to receive and send instant bank payment at discounted fees on international transactions. The Fast Money International Money Transfer Platform disclosed this in Lagos, and we have that report. You're welcome back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. Each year, corruption and illicit financial flows cost the global economy about $3.6 trillion. That's according to the United Nations. It was estimated that Africa loses more than $50 billion every year to illicit flows, although this could be as high as $89 billion a year, which is 3.7% of its GDP. This finding is by the UNCTAD, Economic Development in Africa. And in developing countries where Nigeria is, according to the United Nations Development Program, funds lost to corruption are estimated at 10 times the amount of official development assistance. Now, a lot of findings have also said that corruption is the bane of Nigeria's development. And so while the country and the federal government is out making policies, creating ministries, how much impact or how much attention has been given to the factor corruption and its disruption in economic development? That's what we're discussing this morning with Mr. Soji Apampa, the founder and executive director of the Convention on Business Integrity in Nigeria. Joins us virtually. Mr. Apampa, thank you so much for your time. Good morning, Mr. Apampa. Can you hear me?
Good morning. I hear you clearly.
Great. So what's the cost of this corruption? I mean, it's no news. It's not a breaking news. Neither even is the happening now that corruption is the bane of Nigeria's corruption from sectors, from attracting foreign investment or investors, from even local investors in the public and in the private sector. But how much is this costing Nigeria development of the economy?
Okay, let me start from the absolute figures. Yes, there are many estimates out there, but it's very difficult to put a precise number on the cost of corruption in Nigeria, because corruption is not something that happens in broad daylight. It's not something that people do openly. So a lot of it is hidden. You also talked about illicit financial flows. A lot of it is happening inside companies. It is on their financial statements. You really have to search to find out the real extent of corruption in Nigeria. However, you can measure it in body bags. We saw the other day, and God rest her soul, the house officer that lost her life due to the lift falling in Lagos, falling like 10 floors. How many times have they budgeted for that lift to be fixed? Or the Ikoyi building that collapsed, and a building that should never have gone up to that number of stories. How did it go up to that number of stories? So many people died. So one measure of
Seems we're having a little bit of challenge with the network from Ibadan there, where Mr. Pampa is joining us from. Mr. Pampa, are you back?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right.
I was
Go ahead.
interrupted for a second there.
Yes. So
the other issue, apart from measuring it in the number of body bags, is the foregone development. How much development should have come to different areas in Nigeria if only the monies that were budgeted were actually used for what they were earmarked? That is the second one. What about our broken and substandard infrastructure? The roads, I recall a figure during the Obasanjo regime that 1 trillion was earmarked for roads in the end. Sorry.
Yeah, another disruption there.
Yes. So very, very simply, I think you can measure corruption in terms of number of body bags, foregone development, lack of diversification of our economy, and broken and substandard infrastructure that we're having to deal with. Let me leave the cost of corruption at that.
Okay, so now let's move forward now. We have a relatively new administration led by President Bola Tinubu. We just had ministers giving their portfolios, some ministries created. You know, Nigerians are really expectant. President Tinubu has been described as a pro-market person from his antecedent, and so we expect the foreign investors to flow. What should Nigeria be doing now? What should the president be doing now to set the pace on this issue of corruption and, you know, the deterrent that it brings to both local foreign investors in the private and the public sectors?
Okay, the first thing is that we shouldn't fool ourselves. No politician in Nigeria will fight corruption. And let me qualify that. So we should manage our expectations, because corruption has become a political tool. It's a tool that we use to equip our side while keeping other sides out. So it's a political tool, and politicians do not want it to end in their own time. So if we really want to see progress, what we should be saying to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that in your time, can we build integrity into some of the things that we're doing? And what does that mean? It means that in certain sectors, we will see progress where we're tightening the loopholes, especially in things that go against their policies. For instance, they're trying to harmonize the exchange rate. So there is an interest right now in plugging loopholes from the central bank, plugging loopholes in our financial sector stability. So let's work on that. Let's plug those loopholes. Let's tighten the screws and build integrity into it. Then the next thing, they probably want to make sure that there's food security. Let's plug the loopholes in agriculture. Let's make sure that whatever we're spending on agric goes directly to the production of food. If we do that, sector by sector, we will reduce the levels of corruption. But asking them to go after those who have stolen money as the primary way of fighting corruption, we have found after 50 years that is futile. Because while they're running after those who have stolen in the last administration, people in their administration loot the treasury as well. So except you actually stop the hemorrhaging and you close the loopholes, then you will never deal with this issue of corruption. So let's be realistic about our expectations that politicians don't really want to fight corruption. However, whatever they have prioritized in their policies, they want those things to be successful. So why don't we tighten the screws in the places where they want to be successful and reduce corruption in those areas? And let's stop, because if one administration after the other works on several sectors at a time, before we go 2-3 administrations, we will actually reduce corruption overall. But to expect that there will not be corruption will be very difficult, given the nature of the kind of politics that they run.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Soji Apampa. I guess what stands out there is when you say that politicians will not fight corruption, and that is worrying because politicians are the hem of affairs. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and perspective with us, founder and executive director of the Convention on Business Integrity in Nigeria, Mr. Soji Apampa.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be taking a break, but before we go, we do hope we're able to get our correspondent, and not a very good news from Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. We can tell you that 37 persons have been rescued, with 2 others fatally injured from a collapsed building. Mr. Pampa just talked of collapsed building there in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The 2-story building, which collapsed late on Lagos Street, Gariki, still has some workers trapped, unfortunately, while efforts are ongoing to rescue them. A statement from the FCT Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, says that a combined team of FEMA, the Federal Road Safety Corps, that's the FRSC, and the FCT Police Command and VIO are currently on carrying out rescue operation at the site. We do have our correspondent there. Hopefully we'll be able to get him, to join us before the program ends. But it's a sad incident right there in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, this collapsed building. We thank God for the 37 persons who have been rescued. We hope that they are not severely injured, and we do wish that they will have a quick recovery. And those who are still trapped, we do wish that the authorities will be able to get them out safe. All right, work is still ongoing there, and we do wish that more people will be rescued. Well, let's go to the markets now and see what's going on there. I do know that the NGX yesterday was just marginally on the edge, barely escaped the claws of the bear. But let's have Anite join us now with more details. Hi, Anite.
Yeah, good morning, Ini.
Good morning.
Another green day for the markets, and of course, it was this one.
It's not a sharp green, Anite.
No,
This is a very dim green.
Very, very, yeah.
Yes.
Just a very marginal.
Very.
In basis points, there you call it about 4.1 basis points. And then in percentage points, it's a mild 0.01% increase.
Very slim.
Yes, so I'll be giving you that details in a moment. And then, so this is for the markets. Midweek trading session. At the close of Wednesday's trading, we just had the stock exchange equities listed on the bourse recorded just about 2.27 billion naira, but we just call it about 2 billion naira gain on the market capitalization. And then, of course, for the all-share index, still within the 65,000 points, and still in the green so far year to date at 27.64%, and then in month to date 1.8%. That's it, as you can see on your board. Moving over to the next slide of the market, we saw a mixed sectoral performance there. We saw the tier one lenders, many of the big banks were in the red. The likes of FBN Holdings, GTCO, the likes of Access Corp, they were all in the red, which is why that counter was more than 0.5% in the red, 0.68%. And then, of course, we also see the oil and gas counter. We saw Cornell going down in the red, 10%. It led 22 losers, and then, of course, 26 losers, in contrast to 22 gainers recorded on the market. And moving over to the activity chart, we also saw a very mixed bag for that market there. It's also, we saw the value dropping by 1.8%, as you can see on your board there. And then for the deals, in terms of the deals, 5.8%. So that's it for that market. So now let's talk to Rotimi Fakayejo to give us more details about the market. Okay, right, for now we can't join Rotimi, but we'll move over to the other side of the market where we saw the bearish sentiment following the bonds market, but we'll give you that details later for the bonds market. But for the treasury bills market, we saw average yield there, it's closed flat at 8.3%. Because yesterday we had the primary market auction by the central bank where they roll over instruments from the 91-day, the 180-day, and the 364 days. But of course, for the 1-year paper, we saw a very massive increase there. We saw at a striking rate for the treasury bills at 13.9%, where we saw investors making a bid of 1.5 trillion naira for the 364-day maturity paper. So this is how it turned out for that market, quiet like I mentioned earlier. And then, of course, for the total number of deals carried out, we saw just about 5. And then for the bonds market, for the OMO market, we saw for the OMO market, it was a flat closing for that market. We saw average yield there close at just about 11.2%. Moving over to the bonds market, we saw bearish sentiment. Investors sold off the February 2028 paper it was increased by 41 basis points, as well as the March 2050 paper, which it increased by 7 basis points, respectively. Meanwhile, the average yield declined at the mid-segment by 2 basis points, falling demand for the April 2029 paper. It retracted by 6 basis points. But take a look at your board there. The 21st of June 2053 paper had the highest attraction there. 5 number of deals at about 5.8 billion naira, total 7.5 billion naira, all carried out in 11 deals. Now moving over to the central bank special bills, where we saw a kind of a slightly tepid movement there for that market. So that's it for that market. If we have Rotimi who give us more details about that market, about the equities market. But for the equities market, we have it that yesterday the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the CEO of the Nigerian Stock Exchange had announced that the NGX is planning to list dollar-denominated bonds as a possible way of tackling Nigeria's lingering FX crisis. Don't forget that Nigeria's economy is very much dependent on dollars for almost everything that we require, from business travels to personal income, so many things across the manufacturing sector, across everywhere, the medicals. Let's not forget that just a couple of weeks ago that GlaxoSmithKline had exited the market. One of the reasons was the access to Forex, which is also a major challenge for many companies, both the ones not listed on the exchange as well as the ones listed on the exchange. So now the NGX has proposed permitting dollar-denominated bonds listing and possibly expanding it to the equities. In addition, the boss is also partnering with regional Securities and Exchange Commission to reform the laws for companies to pay dividends in US dollars. And of course, there is no particular time frame when the proposal may be implemented to facilitate foreign currency access for business in Nigeria, which is Africa's largest economy. So now, what does this mean for companies on the exchange? Well, we'll give you that details in our subsequent appearance on the market. But
I'm sure that will make a very good conversation for capital markets on Saturday, where we'll have more time to discuss and weigh the impact, the possible impact. But remembering that this is just a proposal, I think is the first phase. We haven't seen reactions or adoption or even a plan of how it could work. So it sounds like it's just an idea that's coming up from the NGX. A very
welcome idea.
But we'll see how that goes. But thank you so much, Anita, for that. All right, so we did tell you about that sad incident at the Federal Capital Territory. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, has been there, and I think he can join us now to give us update on what's going on there. Hi, Dele. Good morning. Can you hear me? Dele, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. I can hear you.
All right, so what's the updates? Yeah, we do have... Yes, I can hear you. We do have that information that 37 persons have been rescued, 2 are fatally injured, some were still trapped. Do we have an update on that now?
Okay, so, well, unfortunately, the information we have is that currently 2 people are dead, and about 3 persons are still trapped in this building. Now, if you see, it's a 2-story building. It's majorly a residential area as we speak, because about 37 persons were rescued. Some of them were injured, some of them were taken to the hospital, but some of them came out unhurt. But let's also put it out there that this incident happened at about 11 p.m. last night. And so you'd understand that a lot of people were asleep at the time it happened. So perhaps that was what caused the fatality of those 2 lives. Now, as regards the 3 people inside the building, we don't know the status of those 3 people yet, if they are still alive or if they are dead right now. But of course, you have officials of the Federal Road Safety Corps here, you have officials of the Abuja Development Control here. The Minister of the FCT, Mr. Nyesom Wike, was here earlier in the day to also assess the site. But they're working round the clock to ensure that those 3 people, they can get to them in good time.
So we did, you mentioned the officials that are there now, and you said that the minister was there earlier, and unfortunately we have lost 2 lives.
Yes.
I guess it's too early now to say what happened. Is it an old building? Is it an ongoing building? Why do we even have this incident in the first place?
Okay, I didn't quite get you in it because, as you can imagine, the tractors are working, so there's a lot of noise in this area. But what I can tell you is that right now as we speak, the FCT minister, if you look at the 2 buildings behind that particular building that went down, the minister was also particular about those 2 buildings as well. He's saying perhaps they have to bring those buildings down as well because they're not looking healthy for people to inhabit them. So the inhabitants of those 2 buildings as well are also becoming jittery right now as we speak. But of course, yes, there's a lot of security here because they don't want a lot of cars to come to this area. But you could understand why they are doing that as well. It's just for the safety of lives. So, but what we can also tell you is that those 3 people are still trapped in the building. Now there's just 1 floor remaining. Perhaps those 3 people that were trapped were at the ground floor of the building, so that's why it's not easy to get to them right now at this time. So we'd expect that perhaps maybe in another 20-30 minutes they'll get to those people that are trapped underneath. Perhaps they should still be alive.
We do pray daily that they are still alive. And I guess if Mr. Wike was not beginning his job, this is a very, is a push for him to hit the ground running, as we always say. But thank you so much, and I know we'll get more updates from you from that site. A lot of regulatory work to be done, obviously, not just in the Federal Capital Territory, but all around the country, and not just in real estate, but every part. Remember, we talked about standards organization earlier. Let's head to our London studios now, where Juliana is back to grace the program. Juliana, good to see you. You've been up and about around the world, but you come and then you meet this story that the Bank of England is predicted that it will only raise rates once, and that will be it. I wonder if you believe that.
Good morning, Innie. Well, that is the conclusion from a poll conducted by Reuters. I believe they spoke to about 25 economists, and the mood music in this country is that it is perhaps time for the Bank of England to reflect on their monetary policy, and that's because, given we have had 14 consecutive interest rate hikes to 5.25%, inflation is still stubbornly high. It did drop, I believe, in July to 6.8%, but if you compare that to comparable economies in the G7, it's still 3 times higher than the benchmark rate, what the Bank of England prefer, which is at 2%. I think the reason why it's kind of triggered some headlines this morning is because of the data that was received yesterday, having that forensic look at PMI data showing that services, which is really important to the UK economy, it contributes 80% to gross domestic product. It's falling, and we have been talking about inflation and interest rates all year, but now the mood music is going towards a recession, and the fact that these high borrowing costs and the fact that economic output is falling could lead to some really dark days ahead. So yes, we still got quite a bit of time until the Monetary Policy Committee meet at Threadneedle, which I believe is on the 21st of September. But considering we've already had indicators from the Federal Reserve and we've had indicators from the ECB that they are going to pause, perhaps now Andrew Bailey is going to get a clear sign that dragging up these interest rates is not in the best of the British economy.
All right, we'll see that September 21st, I believe. But there's the fear of debt trap, and it's connected to energy bills. We've seen climb, and government has made effort. And I thought it was over, but now we're hearing of debt trap.
That's true. This is all about tomorrow because Ofgem, which is the energy regulator, they are going to announce the price cap for the 4th quarter of the year, which anybody living in the UK knows are the coldest 3 months. So we're all expecting perhaps there to be a drop in the energy regulator's price plan, but that's only because of wholesale gas prices. They've fallen. So yes, we are going to expect there to be a fall, but if you still compare what people are paying for their energy bills at the moment to what they were paying pre the Kremlin invasion of Ukraine, it is still significantly high, and there are lots of people that have been left behind, which is why the Resolution Foundation is saying people are trapped in debt, because it's not just energy bills they've been paying. They've also been paying for the cost of living. So shopping bills are much higher. And the difference between this time last year, Innie, is that there is no government support. So last winter, there was energy support by the way of a reduction in your monthly bills. You were also getting £400 a month if you were from the most vulnerable parts of society. That's all been pulled away. So yes, tomorrow we are expecting the regulator to reduce the bills by the end of the year. You're not getting that support from the government, and there have been a build-up from so many other places around the economy that are making things quite difficult for people in this country at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a long time before the impacts of this cost of living crisis from Ukraine, from COVID, before it wanes off. And, well, we'll be here reporting, Juliana. Thank you. Good to have you back. We'll talk to you at 1:30.
We will. Thank you, Innie. Talk to you then. Thank you.
All right, let's take a short break. We'll be back for crypto. back to watching Business Morning here on Channels Television, the concluding moments always with crypto. And it's good to see that the color has changed today. I don't know how long it will last for, but we see a green all over, more green than red. And it's good news, warms my heart, as Bitcoin well, it's still on 26,000, but at least we have a gain 1.31, and the dominance is still less than 48%. That seems to be like a usual. Now, Ethereum also recovered more than 2%, 2.04 at 1,674.21, and then we look at right there, Doge and all of them, they have more of it. Let's look at the index there and see what that looks like. Yippee! So from 37 to 41 in 24 hours, what a jump. We need to find out, what has driven this in just about 24 hours. So it's now on fear, getting close to neutral. Not celebrating yet, but at least have a little bit of relief. Let's look at the prices there. There you see that Bitcoin, that 24,412, Ethereum, more than 2% up, BNB, more than 2% up, Cardano, more than 3%, 3.66%, and XRP has also recovered. A little bit of calm to the nerves, but let's see if Success knows why the markets recovered or how it recovered overnight. Hi, Success, good morning.
Good morning.
So what happened during the night? Did you guys trade and pump the markets? We saw a recovery in it.
Yeah, the market doesn't just go down in a straight line. So after the dawn, the market has to recover a bit. So that is just the structure of the markets.
So we don't know the drivers, and we don't know how long this positive sentiment is going to last for.
Okay, if I'm going to say in the short term, I think we are going to see a rise in price up to 27,500. I think that's where there's a resistance. Looking at the charts, if the technical analysis, the 27,000 to 27,500, there's a strong resistance there. So I think the markets can recover up to that point before we see any other further direction in the markets.
So you do think that if somebody gets into the market now where Bitcoin is this and Ethereum is this, in a couple of days, by a week, then the person can still, get off the market with some gains?
As usual, I don't like making financial advice. I just say what I see technically or fundamentally. But that's why I see what. It's not financial advice, but the market surely is going to recover to that point next week.
All right, Success. Thank you so much for your perspective. And of course, this is not a financial advice. If you want to take the risk, find out from your financial consultant, or you want to take the risk on your own. But thank you, founder of BCU, for your time this morning. And that's it on the program this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning. 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations. I hope it was worth your time. If not, we promise to do better tomorrow. But you can watch this program anytime you want on our YouTube channel, YouTube/Channels Web, and look for Business Morning, or you look for Business Incorporated. We'll always have something for you. Talking about Business Incorporated, I'll be back at 1:30 to give you updates from the world of business. Promises to be worth your time. Join me then.